Ready, give it to go. Terrence, you first. Accio. Good. Bailey.
Accio.
Very good. Luke.
Accio.
Wonderful. Now Gretchen.
Accio.
Excellent. Now all together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Accio Hogwarts Radio.
This is Hogwarts Radio, episode 245 for May 26, 2019. Hogwarts Radio is the official podcast for wizarding news from HPA&A, discussing all things Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts, and the rest of the wizarding world. For the quickest up-to-date news on the franchise, make sure you check out wizarding.news. Welcome to episode 245 of Hogwarts Radio. I'm Terrence Pinkston.
I'm Gretchen Rush.
And I'm Alex Wilman.
Hogwarts Radio can be found anywhere you get your podcasts online. It doesn't matter where you listen, just be sure to subscribe and you'll have a new episode as soon as it's released.
Make sure you follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to get in on the fun with other listeners and fans of the series.
Don't forget, Hogwarts Radio is also on Patreon. By pledging, you'll receive instant access to bonus content, including Into the Common Room, Hogshead Radio, and much more. Sign up today over at patreon.com/Hogwarts Radio.
This week's episode is brought to you by Patreon producer Ji Yang. Well, I learned something new today, guys. I learned that there's cauliflower pizza. And my mind is blown at this thought. Like, cauliflower is that kind of vegetable that, yeah, you know, it's fun to eat. You know, you could put it in your dip, you know, your French onion, your ranch, or whatever dip you like. But on a pizza, what is this magic? What is this? This is foreign to me.
So you can tell that Terrence knows very little about cauliflower pizza when he describes it as being on a pizza. Well, I guess it could be a pizza topping, but actually, if you like dice it up, like in a food processor or whatever, you can make pizza crust out of it. And so that's what cauliflower pizza is to me. I use a cauliflower crust. It's actually really good. I don't know how we got on the topic of it today, but we were all chatting about what is vegan pizza. And at some point I was like, I love cauliflower pizza. And then Terrence thought I was a Dementor, essentially.
Well, I mean, okay. So I thought, you know, toppings themselves go on pizza. I never thought of making a crust or, you know, the base out of a topping before.
I think it came about because it's gluten-free.
Yes, it is. And I just tried very hard to show people that I made cauliflower pizza for dinner tonight. It's gluten-free. It's also low carb, which is good. And also it's just really tasty. I always loved like veggies as a kid. I'm kind of more vegetarian, like not officially because I do eat meat on occasions, but you know, given the choice between like meat or a veg, I'll often pick the veg. So I make cauliflower pizza with roasted Brussels sprouts on top. So it is like a veg delight.
Oh my God. So Alex, is it too much to ask if we can get your recipe for your cauliflower pizza that way we can post it on hogwartsradio.com and listeners of the show can try it if you have a recipe?
I do. I kind of like half invent it / half make it. But yeah, I will absolutely post that. I, for listeners, am a complete foodie, love to cook, love to bake. I have a Harry Potter cooking book, and I've recreated some of the recipes in that as well. And I could also share some pros and cons of the Harry Potter cookbook.
Oh, that is so cool. Have either of you tried to make your own butterbeer?
Yes.
I have not. Alex, how did it turn out?
Awful. I'm just going to be so honest about it. It was awful.
Oh, no.
Especially since maybe Gretchen and I were in the parks last week and got to try some official butterbeer, which was way better.
Oh, God.
But it is complicated. But I will say I have ordered the like secret menu butterbeer at Starbucks, and that is pretty good.
So what is your favorite thing to make out of that Harry Potter cookbook?
Oh, goodness. Honestly, I think the pumpkin pasties. Those are so good. And you can make them sweet and savory if you like to play around with food. So I believe it was 2 years ago was the 20th anniversary. And so on September 1st, my husband and I hosted this huge Back to Hogwarts party in our tiny apartment. And we cooked like all this Harry Potter food. And it turned out that the pumpkin pasties were like by far the biggest hit. They were so good.
I haven't tried those yet. I make Hagrid's rock cakes out of that book.
What is that?
They're just scones,
Aww.
but they're really good, and it's like a really simple scone recipe.
What flavor are they?
I don't think they have a flavor. They're like you add in some sugar and some cinnamon. They're like a very basic scone.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, they're good.
It sounds delicious. You guys are making me hungry. And we all know where we're going for September 1st. We're going back to Hogwarts, yes, but we're going to Alex's place so she can cook the feast.
Yes.
Oh, hey.
I'm sure all of our listeners are invited too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Just show up to South Florida. I'll have you in. I love to host people. We'll have a great time.
Oh, my gosh. Well, speaking of great times, you ladies had a wonderful time. I heard a little birdie told me, a raven told me, or I'm sorry, wrong podcast. An owl told me that you guys, the reason why you weren't on last week's episode is because you were busy out there in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter theme park in Orlando. So did you guys have fun?
We had so much fun.
Yeah.
We had a blast.
It was kind of ridiculous how much fun we had.
What after all this time, I'm sure both of you have been to the parks a couple of times already, at least. What's your favorite thing about like just being immersed in that world?
I don't know. It's like so hard to pick a favorite. For me, I feel like it's literally just going there. Like Alex came down and we spent the whole day in the park on Wednesday, and then she left on Thursday, and I ended up just going back by myself. And I had my headphones in, I'm listening to a podcast and just walking around. I didn't even do much. I like rode a couple rides, but I'm just walking around enjoying it. I like sat on the steps in Diagon Alley. I'm eating my butterbeer ice cream. Like just to be there and to look around and see all the incredible detail, it's just so much fun. It's just so much fun just to be there.
Gretchen, were you listening to Hogwarts radio whenever you were walking around in the theme park?
I mean, I was listening to binge mode because Game of Thrones.
Oh, well.
But any other day, it would have been Hogwarts radio.
Missed opportunity. Ugh. I would really like, every time I see somebody with a pair of headphones or AirPods in, I'm like, yeah, I bet they're listening to Hogwarts radio. I'm walking around the mall.
Sure.
Yep, they're listening to Hogwarts radio. I just waved to them. Totally
That's
kidding.
me. Hey.
I see you.
Alex, what about you?
I have to second what Gretchen said. What was funny was when we were walking around the parks, Gretchen and I were like kind of eavesdropping on other people's conversations as they were like walking around the parks, maybe as people for the first time or people who had like season, annual passes to Universal. And everyone comments on the attention to detail. And it is just remarkable. I have been there, I want to say like 4 or 5 times now. And it's still like you step into Hogsmeade, you round the corner to Hogsmeade and you see the snow-covered tops and you see Hogwarts in the background and you're like, oh my God, I'm home. This is magical. And it's this wonderful feeling of bringing your childhood to life. The attention to detail, but also I think the fandom that's in there, like no one is going to Harry Potter World because they're just like, oh, I decided to go to Universal for the Hulk and let me check out what Harry Potter World is about. Like people are going with a mission and they are going to see Hogsmeade and they're going to take the train and going to Diagon Alley. And it's just so fun to be in that really supportive, really enthusiastic environment where everyone's like freaking out about the tiny little details. And it truly just feels like home. And I think that's really the most magical part of going to the parks.
Is there one thing in particular that still surprises you guys? Attention to detail aside, is there one thing that still surprises you every single time you go?
Well, this is only my second time going, and every time that the dragon in Diagon Alley bursts flame and you feel the heat on your skin, that's just absolutely incredible. That gets me every single time.
Next time I go, I am so going to, because you can kind of time it a little bit, like when he's going to breathe that fire. So that's why everybody's standing out there with their cameras up. You know what? I know you guys are. I know all of our listeners that are not Game of Thrones fans, like they're sick and tired of Game of Thrones. I promise it's going away after this month. It's already series finale's already
Dead.
had. But I am so gonna say Dracarys next time that dragon like lights up the sky. That is, and I'm gonna film myself with that, and maybe in a Khaleesi wig too. That's gonna be so cool. But I digress.
I'll braid it for you. I love to braid.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we'll have a party. Sorry. Anyway, yeah.
I think for me, so this last time that we went, even though, the parks are pretty intimate, there's a lot to do, but it's not overwhelming. And I still find something new every single time I go. That's that I don't have season passes, so I'm not there, super frequently. But this past time, when I went with Gretchen, I had never done the Gringotts Bank Exchange. And so I actually did it this time, and it was really fun, and it was so cool to walk into, I forget where I ended up using my banknotes, but using my Harry Potter currency to buy like a chocolate frog and something else for a coworker who had to cover my cases while I just took off a day of work in the middle of the week to go to Harry Potter World. So she's a huge fan. So I was like, I will bring you back presents, I swear. So that was really fun. I think there's always, even if it's like there's only a couple rides, the rides are great. But even if it's just it's smaller, there's always something new to discover if you just go looking for it, and that's always really fun, and it never ceases to amaze me.
So, Alex, I don't think we've ever heard, what is your favorite food from either the Three Broomsticks or the Leaky Cauldron, or even if you've actually eaten at those places before, which... I mean, it's like, it's one of those things that you kind of have to do every time you go. It's like there's certain places you have to visit. There's certain things that you have to do, but also they take so much care in preparing the food and the attention to detail with the food that I honestly can say that I had, something 10 years ago. I went, I think as recent as last year, and I had the same exact thing, same taste, same expectation. As whenever I first tasted it. So that just gives you like that adds to the level of intimacy, but that also shows you how much they really take care of the finer details in something such as food.
Yeah. So Gretchen, I believe we ate at the Three Broomsticks, right? We had lunch at the Three Broomsticks.
No, we ate at the Leaky Cauldron.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Very similar, the exact same menu.
Pretty much. But we had fish and chips, and they were actually really good. And the portion was like kind of huge. Like, I think Gretchen and I could have split one plate, and that would have been sufficient for the both of us. But I actually will say that I didn't partake with Gretchen this time, but the butterbeer ice cream is phenomenal. I love it. And for beer connoisseurs, the brewery is actually really good. The Dragon Scales, I think it's like an amber lager, is really, really good. I, having lived in Chicago for a little while, got very into beers and microbreweries and all of that. And they actually have really good beer. Now, for our younger fans, I'm going to steer you towards butterbeer, which has so much sugar, you will have a fantastic time. But for our age-appropriate fans, I would highly recommend the brewery. It's actually very good.
Yeah, the butterbeer ice cream was incredible. This was my first time having it, and I loved it. It was actually my dinner that day, and no regrets. But they also, at Florian Fortescue's, they had a bunch of other really great sounding ice cream flavors like Earl Grey and lavender, fun stuff. So if you're not into the butterbeer, there's still a bunch of different options that sounded delicious. I just could not afford to try them all, sadly.
So, Alex, we've asked this to all of our hosts as well. We all have a wide variety of opinions with this one, but the butterbeer, which one is your favorite? We have the warm, we have the cold, which is kind of like the original, and then we have the frozen. And I don't think they're serving the warm right now, unless I'm mistaken. They only do that during kind of the winter months, the cooler, the fall and winter. Yeah. So out of all of those, please inform our listeners, which one is your favorite?
The warm. I love hot butterbeer. So My birthday is in December. This past year was my 30th birthday. I'm outing how old I am right now.
Club 3 yo.
Yo, hey, 30, 40 and thriving. For my 30th birthday, a bunch of my friends and I went to the Orlando Informer Insider event, and they had like unlimited access to hot butterbeer. I had the worst stomach ache the next day, but it was so worth it. I chugged that stuff.
Wow.
Gretchen and I partook in some frozen butterbeer, which was very delightful. Especially, South Florida gets hot. It gets real humid in the summertime. That is clutch. I just think it is a tad too sweet with like the whipped topping on top as well. I think Gretchen and I both finished like half, and then we went into the restroom and washed out the rest because we wanted to keep the souvenir cup. But we couldn't finish the entire butterbeer. But definitely the hot in the wintertime with like your robes and you're looking at the magic of all the Christmas lights. Like, it's just wonderful. I love it.
Did you guys get to? I don't know if I can't remember. I think this is only in the one in Hollywood. But did you catch the night show on the castle, or was that?
I think that happens in Orlando too, because the people next to me on the Hogwarts Express, they were like, "Oh, we got to get to Hogwarts because there's going to be the night show." And people last night were lining up at like 6:00, and I was like, "Oh, good luck." I was like, "I'm not staying that late." So I think there is. Alex, have you seen it?
I have not. Actually, only thought it was an LA thing, so I guess it is an Orlando thing too. Mind you, I live about 2.5 hours south of Orlando, so I'm not getting up to Orlando all that often. But also Gretchen and I went really hard, so I would have been shocked if we had made it that long, because I think by like 5:00 we looked at each other and we were like, let's go take a nap. Like, we were both so tired.
Yeah, we
had a lot of fun.
Well, that's wonderful, and I know, Alex, you said you took the day off to go up there and kind of be with Gretchen through this amazing experience that you guys had. But Gretchen, that's not why you were down there, was it?
No, it was not.
So would you mind letting our viewers know why you were down there?
I would love to share why I was there. So I was invited very, very last minute to go to Orlando for a press event about Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, and it was pretty rad. I did not get to ride the ride, sadly, which was good because as we were walking through, you could see people still working on it, and I was like, okay, they're still doing things. I don't really want to ride it just yet, but we got a huge sneak peek, and I wrote a whole long post for MuggleNet detailing everything that I saw, and I'm not gonna lie, this ride looks pretty freaking awesome.
Were there at this press event, were there any actors that showed up at all?
No, and there were not too many people working on the ride either who came. The only two people who came were Elaine Hines, who is the show producer for the ride, and Gary Blumenstein, who's the ride's creative director. So they both showed up and kind of walked us through, and we got to go through the entire queue. And then they walked us to a couple points where we could take pictures and answered questions and did a Q&A. So they were super awesome, but there was no talent there, no.
So we're definitely going to link in our show notes to your article over there at MuggleNet. But were they able to tell you exactly what the theme of the ride is? I mean, obviously you're in the motorbike, but I mean, are you trying to get away from creatures? Are you did they give you at least a premise of what you can expect whenever you ride it?
Yes. They gave us a ton of information, a lot of new information. So I will try to relay as much as possible. But really, it is quite a lot. So the basics of the story they told us are that this is the Forbidden Forest and there's these ruins. And the story behind the ruins is that they used to be populated by Hogwarts students. They would just like hang out there and they would draw on the walls and chill. But now Hagrid has decided to take over the ruins for himself and his magical creatures. And I don't know if you guys remember, there was like a hut that popped up. You could see it in the aerial shots, and everyone is like, oh, maybe that's Hagrid's hut. They said that that's not Hagrid's hut. That's an outbuilding where he keeps the blast-ended Scroots.
Oh, wow. Okay. So kind of like a stable for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Hagrid's hut is actually, it's between the new Hagrid ride and the Flight of the Hippogriff ride.
Okay.
So kind of on the other side of what we're seeing. But basically it sounds like, so they walked us through the whole queue and we actually got to watch the video that you'll see in the queue. So you know how when you go on Forbidden Journey, there's the video of Harry, Ron, and Hermione in the dark arts classroom, and at Gringotts, there's the video of Bill and I think, or it's not Bill. Yeah, it is Bill. Bill Weasley and Grip Hook.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's another video like that. You're going to stop and you watch this video, and it is Hagrid and Arthur Weasley. And I, of course, so people show up, and literally one of the press people there was like, sorry, who's Hagrid? And the creative director had to explain who Hagrid was to this news person. And I was like, oh no, I'm the biggest nerd here. So we get into the video, and I'm like, oh guys, it's Arthur Weasley. It's Arthur Weasley. Everyone's like, what? I'm like, okay, well, I'm super stoked. So the video explains that Hagrid is like taking care of all these magical creatures, and you're going to look around and see them. And Arthur Weasley is there because he's going to enchant Sirius's motorbike to fly and take you around and see the magical creatures.
Oh wow! Oh, that's cool. I love that they're sticking to kind of like this pre-show before you actually get to the show/ride. I kind of envision this experience just like Gringotts, where the cart itself like kind of rotates as you're going through. And I know that we talked about the layout of the track on last week's episode, where there was going to be a stall and fall back, so maybe you're going straight up into the air and then you're coming right back down.
Yes, and Gary Blumenstein, he said that part is the devil's snare. So I don't know if maybe you go up and the devil's snare grabs you and that's what causes you to fall, or if the devil's snare is at the top and you fall to avoid being caught by it. But either way, somehow the devil's snare will be involved with that backwards free fall.
Oh wow.
That's really cool.
That is really neat. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's see what else I learned. So you watch that little video, you travel through a couple like hallways, and you see a lot of magical creature stuff. And then you go into a room that they've called the chamber. And that is the room where they say that Hagrid crossbred the manticores and the fire crabs to create the blast-ended scroots. And you can even smell like a rotting fish smell in the chamber.
Ew.
Yeah, which is as described in the books. And then there's some beautiful art by Mina Lima hanging in that room as well. So obviously the room, they said, is inspired by the backstory of the Blast-Ended Scroots.
And did you get to see, I mean, I know we've seen it in concept art, but did you get to see a Blast-Ended Scroot?
No, that I think the Blast-Ended Scroot, the unicorn, the centaurs, everything that was kind of released as their magical creatures when they teased all that, that's all part of the ride. So we couldn't see any of it from where we were standing, and none of it was in the queue.
Oh, but he did let you know about the devil snare, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure. That wonderful creature that is devil snare.
Right, that creature, the devil snare.
Yeah. Oh wow! No, and I completely forgot that Hagrid kind of created the Blast-Ended Scroots when he crossbred and stuff like that, and it kind of makes me think, oh my god, that's kind of amazing but awful at the same time.
Oh yeah,
that's definitely something we're gonna have to revisit in a later episode. But wow, it sounds like, I mean, the attention to detail, I mean, everything from the looks to the smells that you just mentioned sounds incredible.
Yeah, it's really cool. They also told us that the ride itself is on 6.6 acres of land, and they planted 1,200 trees to create the Forbidden Forest. So they put a lot of work into this really huge space.
Real trees?
Yeah.
Wow. So that means they're going to have to have a landscaping team come in and keep up with that. That's crazy. Holy cow.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But it's also good for the environment.
It really is.
Know them.
Yeah. Great job, Universal.
Very proud.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can't wait to ride this thing. I think I'm going to have to, go down there in the next month or so just to check it out. It opens on June 13th, right?
June 14th. June 13th. Yeah, you're right.
So is that the soft opening or grand opening, or are they going to have a soft opening?
That's the grand opening.
So are they going to have a soft opening? Do you know?
I don't know. They did not say.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Normally
So
they'll
maybe if you go a few days early, it
right.
might
Well,
be open.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. They'll preview the ride and, kind of gauge reaction, make the last minute adjustments. They're like, oh, yeah, we got to add seatbelts to this thing because people are falling out,
Last minute things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Were you kind of disappointed, like, after everything that you learned, like, you didn't actually get to ride it?
I was a little disappointed, yeah.
Aw.
But I learned so much too. Like I wasn't expecting. They gave us the whole backstory. He told us all these details, and I got to watch the video that you're going to see in line. Like, so I still got like a really cool experience.
Oh,
So I'm
that's
excited to ride it when I come back in July.
That's cool. Oh, so you are coming back in July.
I am.
Ooh, very interesting. We might have to have a Hogwarts Radio meetup.
Yes.
Alex is going crazy right now on webcam.
So excited. So excited.
Well, that's cool. I'm glad that you had a great time, and welcome to the Big Boys Club. I mean, well, the big boys / girls club, where you actually go and cover a press event for Harry Potter. This is your first one, so
Yeah, it was cool.
really neat stuff. Yeah.
Gretchen, what was the hashtag that we came up with for you for the weekend, or I came up with? Was it Gretchen's Fancy Life or something like that? I can't remember, but it was because, like, they, worked to make sure that Gretchen could be there and, like, took really good care of her. And, like, I kind of got to reap some of those benefits on a very small scale just by riding Gretchen's coattails. And so the whole time we were rocking around, and I was like, oh, Gretchen's Fancy Life. Like, this is what we're doing. But we had so much fun. And like, seriously, it was so funny when Gretchen found out. She like messaged in our Slack chat and she was like, Alex, where are you? Why are you not answering your phone? I'm coming to South Florida. And as soon as I saw that text message, I was like, oh, hold on. I got to arrange work coverage. I will be there. Like, there was just no question about it. And it was so fun.
It's like vacation day, a spontaneous vacation day.
Exactly.
What's funny is I told my bosses love, or they know how much I love Harry Potter. Like, my current office is a copy room that was converted into an office. So it's a tiny cupboard. So I actually have a sign on my door that says the cupboard under the stairs. And so like everyone knows how much I love it. And so I went to my bosses and I was like, this is kind of just this once in a lifetime opportunity. And I think I'm just going to roll with it. And one of my bosses who has a kid who loves Harry Potter was like, go, no questions asked. Go. We will see you Thursday. I was like, thanks. And I just took off, and it was so fun. So
awesome.
Thanks, Legal Aid. I had a great time.
Alex, I love your office, by the way. I've seen various pictures posted, throughout Twitter, Facebook, and the Slack chat, of course. And you've really done a cute job decorating this office, this little copy room under the stairs,
My copy room under the stairs. My whole condition with my bosses was I would move in if they would give me unlimited discretion to decorate. And so it is very Harry Potter influenced. And there's a random support pole in the middle of it. So I painted it with chalk paint. And so it's a chalk pole. And I often write Harry Potter quotes on my chalk pole. So
I saw that. Yeah, I was like, oh, she has a column, a beam right in the middle of her office. But that's awesome that you've been that creative with it. So it looks great. I love it.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And Gretchen, it sounds like you had a great time, and I doubt this is going to be the last of the coverage that you do as news team manager over at MuggleNet for any kind of event such as this. So great job with the article, by the way. We invite you guys to go check that out over on MuggleNet. Of course, we'll link that in the show notes. Well, this week's episode is kind of weird, you guys. We're going to break it up over 2 parts. So we're not gonna really have like a set big discussion with Gretchen and Alex here. But before we let everybody go here today, I did want to ask, because this thought has been swimming in my mind for the past week with all this talk in the United States about infrastructure and all that other stuff. We have witches and wizards that use infrastructure, the infrastructure of the Muggle world. They use the roads to get by. They use the plumbing, the water, the sewage, all that stuff, right? and even in Great Britain, there's no separate entity. There's no wizarding water system or anything like that, or wizarding roads, or just things that are exclusive to wizards. But it got me thinking. Like, we pay taxes on that stuff for the upkeep and, to build new roads or to upgrade the current systems that we have. But witches and wizards kind of get away with that. And as I was thinking about that, I'm like, wait, that doesn't sound right. And it kind of pissed me off.
So here's my thought. A very rough preliminary here. So it is an interesting concept because, as we have discussed at length over the last couple of episodes, actually, the wizarding world has its own form of currency, has its own banking system, has everything separate except for shared common utilities. Hypothetically speaking, to play devil's advocate, we also don't quite know what improvements they might be secretly making to Muggle infrastructure that we just don't know about because we are Muggles and we're not supposed to be privy to that information. So in a sense, you could say it is kind of in-kind payment. It's not so much a direct tax or a Muggle currency tax, but they may at night be improving our highways and our water system. And God help us, could they improve the internet access and just make it a universal right for everyone instead of the monopoly that is Comcast and AT&T? I'm totally down for that. If you're listening, wizards. But, I do think about that. And just maybe the payment is in kind and not so much a direct taxation.
That could make sense. I could see that. I guess I don't really know because I still have so many questions about other aspects of wizarding life. Like, if you're a Muggle born, then you go to primary school and all the way up until 5th grade or whatever, until you get your Hogwarts letter.
Yeah.
So your parents obviously are Muggles and they're paying the school taxes and you're getting an education. So if you're wizarding born, what if you don't think you have the skills to teach your children the basics like reading and writing, and you want to send them to a primary school? Do they have wizarding primary schools, or would they send them to a Muggle primary school? Well, you're not paying the school taxes. Now you're benefiting from that school. And how are you even in the district? Because what address are you putting down? So I think there's so much about the actual nitty gritty of wizarding life that we just don't know. And I guess because they're wizards, they can get away with that, would be my only thought.
Maybe confunding the head of the school system or the education secretary, or somebody really high up to where they don't have to deal with that nitty gritty payment. And I don't know, there's there's a million questions about this, and it's stuff that, because the world is this expansive, is it something we're reading into too much, or are these legitimate questions that we have about wizarding life?
I think there could be a homeschool wizarding network, of, basic elementary education, as you were saying, Gretchen, just of a bunch of wizards who get together and kind of homeschool their children together. I mean, we see that in the Muggle world all the time, kind of like the Montessori school of wizards. But I think these questions are fun. And a lot of people might be like, oh, we're looking into this a little too much. Just stop reading between the lines. But if you also think about Jo and how expansive the world is and how much time and attention and detail, you have to imagine her late one night, thinking about these issues and for sure having answers stored up about how this whole world works, because she understands this world so in such a comprehensive 360-degree way that these are things that she has to have thought about in the 20 years that we have had, 20 plus years that we have had Harry Potter. These questions have definitely come up in her own mind, and I would love one day just to pick her brain about all of these nuts and bolts of how the wizarding world works.
And I really hope it's not something as simple as, well, we saw that the Prime Minister is aware of the wizarding community, and I hope it's just not something as simple as oh, there's just an unspoken agreement, with the wizarding community that they get to use our utilities and our infrastructure because there's not that many of them. It doesn't take up that, it's not that big of a burden on on the infrastructure. It's not big stress. They're fairly quiet. I just hope it's something not as simple as that.
I don't think so. I think it has to be something a little bit more multi-layered than that. Because, I mean, even, like, just simple things like muggle-based or, like, not muggle-based, but, like, muggle world-based access to the ministry is much more complicated than that. And we're talking about just, like, an access point to the ministry. Mm-hmm. So I really think there's something a lot more nuanced, whether it be, like, a Confundus charm or, like, a wizarding homeschool network or, like, primary schools in Diagon Alley that we never heard about. I think there's a brilliant answer out there that we just haven't learned yet.
Yeah, I just can't imagine that, like, Narcissa Malfoy is like, all right, Draco, time for a reading. So I love the idea of, like, a homeschool network, because I'm sure she probably, she hired a tutor or something, and she gets somebody in there to teach her kids, so...
Do you think we'll ever learn the answer to these deep questions? I mean, no. Is this something that we're just going to speculate on forever unless we ask J.K. Rowling directly?
I just think it's too in depth. Like, she drops these little, like, nuggets of information. She's not going to be like, let me explain the infrastructure to you.
Well, she did take the time to explain to us how wizards defecate at Hogwarts.
And that was a short little tidbit of information.
Yes, but it was also something that blew up the fandom. It just over something so mundane.
That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So you never know. She might just be like, and by the way, there's a wizarding Montessori school for the elite. You're welcome. Like, just a little blurb.
Well,
true. I can see that.
You really got to think about it, because, like, if she had been willing to put the thought into Gamp's elemental laws of transfiguration, like, you can't transfigure food, you can't you can't do all these certain things. I don't know all of them. I'm a bad fan. You had to think that there is some level of thought at some point that is going to come out. I don't know. I kind of refuse to believe that we're never going to learn the answer to these questions.
Agreed. Totally agreed. I'm also an eternal optimist. My coworker described me today as someone who probably pukes rainbows. So I'm just going to hope that we are always going to get an answer to everything we want to know in life. Mainly Harry Potter questions.
Well, according to my Snapchat filter, I do puke rainbows. But anyway, you know what I'm also thinking, Alex? Now that I've got you here, did we ever learn? Is there like wizarding lawyers?
So I have thought about this deeply, because I've thought about, like, if I was a wizard and was still a lawyer, what would I do? I would have to imagine yes, because the British legal system is different than the American legal system, but it's still, like, our legal system incorporates some core tenets of what the British system does. And there is kind of the basic due process right that is there. And we have people held in Azkaban, which is pretty much like max security prison awaiting death row, and to have them throw in there. And then we've also seen tribunals. We saw in the Goblet of Fire, we saw those tribunals. And I just wonder if maybe, oh my God, you guys, I just had a light bulb. That would be a great fanfic to be like the lawyer who tried to defend Barty Crouch Jr. in his tribunal. Oh, wow. So I don't know if we have, like, direct allusions to it, but I think on the periphery they do exist. I'm so excited by this question. Thank you, Taryn.
Yeah, because I remember the trial, but I don't remember Barty Crouch Jr. actually having anyone defending him. The only moment I remember is, like, they're like, well, what about Snape? And Dumbledore stands up and he's like, nah, Snape's cool. So but then when Harry has to come in later because of the magic in the 5th book, Dumbledore defends him at that point. So
Yeah.
I wonder if it's the kind of thing where it's like, if you're a good guy, you can get a defender, but if you're a bad guy, you don't get anyone.
Yeah, are there certain rights that
Right? Do they have
people
Miranda
have?
rights?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you guys, these are things that are going to keep me up at night, but I'm so excited to come back the next time I'm on and give you all of my detailed thoughts.
That is awesome. Yeah, we're definitely gonna add this to the discussion topics that we have, because you know what? Next week we're gonna be discussing wizarding healthcare.
Hey.
Yeah. You know that that Medicare W. You know, that's wizarding Medicare.
Whitacare.
Whitacare.
Kind of sounds like you have a speech impediment, but it's wonderful.
What do you got? Whitacare? What?
Whitacare.
Anyway.
I'm having too much fun.
Anyway, you guys, so that concludes part 1 of this week's episode. Stay tuned for part 2, coming very, very soon. In fact, it's coming like right after this thought. All right, everybody, we are back this next segment here, and I told you we would be back. Didn't I tell you? I said, oh, it's just going to be days later for me, but like seconds later for you guys. That is the magic of podcasting here. But we've let Gretchen and Alex go for the evening so they can go out and have fun. I think Gretchen's seeing a play out there in Chicago right now, and Alex is probably living it up on the beach somewhere. I don't know. But Jeff and I are back here on the show, and we were kind of brainstorming what in the world could we talk about and kind of draw out a conversation with. Well, we ran across a couple of really amazing articles and sites online, but today we're going to spend most of our time on the wizarding financial system, which is in itself, as we were going through, we were just learning a little bit about it, and it's so expansive. That's the only way to put it. But Jeff, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. This, like Terrence just said, we just spent a couple of minutes before recording talking about what we were going to discuss, and came across some great lore-bending, lore-defining things about, and just amazing questions people asked about the wizarding legal system and the wizarding financial system, basically. Yeah. And we got to talking about how we do know a bit about both, but only through the observations we saw that some of the trials from, the Barty Crouch stuff, and Harry being, questioned at the Ministry by Umbridge and having Dumbledore spring up to defend him, and we wondered, what is the actual system in place there?
I think we, last segment, Alex was talking about Wizigators. Like literal litigators, but Wizigators in the wizarding world. And I think the conclusion that we came to was, well, I mean, there really was no talk of lawyers in the wizarding world at all. And
no.
we were just trying to wreck our brains on, had we seen any in this series. We did a lot of online searches, and the ultimate answer was no in this case. But there were
seems to be an absence of basic legal rights for people in the magical world, which is crazy to think about. But every time Harry was accused of something, or underage magic or whatever, it's not, oh, you're accused of this. It's, we detected it and we are punishing you now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no
opportunity for defense.
In one shot, it's like judge, jury, and executioner, really. So
we laugh about it, but that's actually a horrible system. Like, what's the deal there? Whatever. If we're going to talk about that or the financial system, which is also very fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, they're both very archaic. It seems like, and I mean, of course. So the financial system is. It's complex. I mean, even in the Muggle world, I still don't understand it all myself. I understand that if I provide somebody a service, that the understanding is that I am getting paid for that service, which I can use that currency on other goods and services. So it's a cycle, right? And that's the way it is in the wizarding world, except for magic is involved.
Right.
And magic provides all sorts of opportunities for misuse. It provides opportunities for different services.
And...
Yeah, really. And
we were just talking about an interesting conundrum of subterfuge. Is what would happen if we know you. Well, maybe we should back up. We found out that there is a list of things, like Joe Rowling said this in an interview in 2000, and then I think, Terrence, you found some additional information, but basically she said there is legislation that defines what you can and cannot conjure magically. Now, that's just legally speaking. Of course, you can conjure anything you want, but it could be illegal. But she also says something that you conjure out of thin air will not last. That's a direct quote from Joe Rowling. I'll say it again. Quote, something that you conjure out of thin air will not last. That's pretty vague, and we already know that some things can last for even years, like some coins that Hermione made for the Dumbledore's Army group. That was lasted several years because she made them in Order of the Phoenix, then we heard about them again in Deathly Hallows. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So, but Joe says they will not last. So they're not permanent, at least.
And there are exceptions to what they call Gamp's law of elemental transfiguration, and that I'm sure we've talked about on a previous episode. But to remind everybody, Gamp's is very. It's very brilliant. It's very genius in the way that it is. It's nothing can be conjured from nothing, right? So some of the things that can't be conjured are like food, money. I think there was love and soul and information or knowledge.
Knowledge.
Yeah. So those are the things that can't. You can't. Of course, you can't create food out of thin air. You can transform food, duplicate it, and stuff like that. But you can't. You just can't make it.
Right.
Love. It's impossible to create like the true love. Money, which is what we're going to spend the bulk of our time today talking about, is that you can't create it out of anywhere. Otherwise, the magical world wouldn't work, and in any financial system, really wouldn't work.
The economic system would collapse.
And can you imagine? Oh my God! Just like I just thought through this. So, Fantastic Beasts during that time frame, 1928, 1929, markets fell out. Mm-hmm. Do you think that that's because? Like,
what was to prevent a rogue wizard from conjuring, except the fact that we just said you can't conjure money, but does that cover Muggle money? What if you conjured counterfeit Muggle money, then went to a Muggle bank and was able to hoodwink them into exchanging it, laundering it for real, verified, currency that is real money, and then take that money to the goblin banks and have it transferred or converted to galleons? Are the goblins? I mean, we know goblins can detect false or adulterated currency, but you're not giving them that. You're giving them real currency that is absolutely real because you laundered it through a bank, a Muggle bank. But I still feel like goblins have a special ability to just sense something's wrong. And I don't know if that's been proven or said anywhere, but we know that they have many other ways of detecting, people trying to hoodwink them.
I think in this article on Sci-Fi Stack Exchange, which is absolutely brilliant. If you guys have the opportunity to check it out, I'll link it in the show notes. But it says, in relation to money, J.K. Rowling told us in an interview that it's impossible to create money out of nowhere or the magical world wouldn't work. I think the same goes for gold, etc., yada, yada. Why? Because it would ruin the economy.
Right. But it's the same principle, okay, with why can't you conjure food? You're saying that law says it's impossible, so you can't even do it, correct?
Well,
or is it illegal? What are you saying?
See, well, that's the thing, right? Because it's possible to create gold and money through alchemy.
Right, but it doesn't last, which is what Joe said. But also food, it wouldn't work nutritionally because you'd eat it and then it would not be there anymore. So how would you get any nutritional value of it, right? So is that why you can't conjure food?
Is that why Voldemort just ultimately disappeared?
Just wasted
away. Thanos away. Yeah.
Yeah. but yeah, so as far as the laundering money and trying to fool the goblins, I guess you could try that, but I feel like they could detect something amiss.
Now, let's talk for a minute, because I know we mentioned this on an episode a few weeks ago or a few months ago, that what about credit? Credit is something that kind of floats out there, and it's something that you don't have the hard money like right there in front of you. So how do goblins really keep track of that?
And then how do they litigate if someone breaks their agreement? And does the Ministry of Magic just said, "We've detected you're late on your bill and you are banished from the wizarding community"? Like, what? And
Wizarding
no defense
debt collectors,
because they've done it already.
Yeah, wizarding debt collectors.
Right.
I mean,
oh my gosh.
And there's like no law to or regulation to govern them or how ruthless they can be.
Oh my goodness.
That's just
wizarding repo.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Oh, this wand is repoed, but
yep, they snatch it. Well, I mean, the Ministry of Magic, for the misuse of underage magic, or whatever the official title is, they say they break your wand on the second offense and kick you out of school, and you can never use magic again on the second offense.
See, and it's like, well, how do they? I mean, while your wand can be snapped for a number of reasons, what's going to stop you from getting another wand and
right.
and doing magic again? That doesn't.
Or just using someone else's or stealing someone else's. We
right.
know that it may not work as well, but still squeeze some magic out of it.
Exactly.
So credit in the wizarding world is an interesting concept because we know it was a really convenient plot device and very smart of Jo to just give Harry a pile of gold, because that basically absolved her of having to explain how Harry could afford to live, period.
It really did.
We just know he's a pile of gold. It's just whatever. So there's no question for the entire story as how does he survive? Well, we know how he survives.
Right.
So so that's great for him, but then we look at the Weasleys, who are constantly, broke or at poverty level or whatever, what have you, however you want to describe it. And then, Arthur works, we would assume, closely with the Muggle world since it's part of his job, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't know what a rubber duck is or an aeroplane, or it just seems really weird. And then Molly is very dismissive of Muggles, when they go to the Hogwarts, just go, Chuck, full of Muggles. So,
but it's like
it's so. Do the magic community really separate themselves that far from the Muggle world? And I think part of it is yes. Obviously, Muggle-born ones are more closely tied to the Muggle world, or at least more interactive with it. But it does seem that magic folk and pure blood or whatever pure magic families that have been in the magical community for hundreds, if not thousands of years, don't associate with us. They just don't, because there's no reason to for them. So as far as the economy and how that would work, they couldn't. I mean, they could use Muggle banks, but that'd be Muggle money. If they need to do anything with magical goods and services, they'd have to use magic, wizard money like Ellie.
Well, see, we were talking about this at the beginning of the episode, where how witches and wizards use Muggle infrastructure. They use the roads and they use the utilities and stuff, but they don't pay any kind of tax whatsoever, and that kind of bothers me a little bit.
Do we know that for sure, though? Like that, I love this point. They're using roads and bridges and trains all the time.
Right.
And pay no income tax that we know of.
Well, see, and the only interaction between the Muggles and the wizards that we know of are between the prime ministers and the presidents and the leaders, right? Or at least one prime minister and the Minister of Magic in Great Britain. But it's like, is there a basic understanding that, we're just going to let these people, since we're not getting in the way of anything, since they don't even know we're here, is it really hurting them? Well, yeah, I mean, because you're actually putting wear and tear on these streets and all the systems and stuff, and you're not contributing to, upgrades or anything like that. Yeah.
That's a great point, but again, like how it fits into the economy, or the wizarding economy, and I like the idea idea of credit, are there loans? Are there wizarding loans? And who enforces them? And then what's the penalty in this legal system like for dealing with people who break their agreements or, late on bills, etc.? Do you just get a note from the Minister of Magic saying, we've detected you're late and you're banished forever from the Wizarding World?
Or do they just take the money straight out of your Gringotts account?
Right.
It's
but
like,
what if you really don't have the money though either?
Right. Yeah. And that begs the question: how do you get paid for doing your job in the Wizarding World? Like, how does Arthur get paid? Is it like direct deposit?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, is the money just like he can go to Gringotts and be like, oh yeah, the money's there, but how do you really honestly track
Does
that?
it just appear in the vault, on every payday? Just kind of the gold just goes in there physically? Because, in our system, it's all digital. So
Right.
we have a bank, your employer tells the other bank, basically, here, take this money from our account and move it to that account.
And I mean, and this is just for, the British Ministry of Magic. It's like, oh, can you just go to Gringotts at any time that it's open and say, what is the balance in my account? And or fight any kind of discrepancy. Like, I didn't authorize this, or, it's like, do you get a notification? Like, does your wand light up whenever your balance goes below 50 galleons or something? Can you set a limit? Or
yeah, Wizarding World, they don't really have text messages, do they? They have like actual, things that pop up and like a face will appear and say something, or, you'll get a howler that actually talks to you.
Right. Maybe that's how
but it does seem like there's only very direct communication in the Wizarding World. Of course, there's the owls and you can write notes and stuff, but it seems like if you want to just send a quick message to someone, they almost always seem to do it in a present, vocal way, or they actually get in touch with them directly through magical means and talk to them for just a few seconds,
Like your
person. We're getting off track here, but
well,
yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, to the point of the whole financial system is, I mean, this is just like the very basics of how how the financial system with consumers and just the very basic idea of banks operate.
Yeah. Well, it has to operate similar to the Muggle world, or else they have an unexplainable economic system. Because why would anyone work? Why would anyone do anything unless you were, paid for your time and services and could then spend that on other goods and services, like you said at the beginning?
Right.
So there has to be a system of, how do you make big purchases like a house? We know you can't conjure it out of nowhere because Joe just said something you conjure out of thin air will not last. So you can't build a house that way. You can't even conjure wood out of thin air because the wood won't last.
Right.
So, you would have to pay somebody for their time, goods, and services to build a permanent house, right?
Exactly.
In the Wizarding World. And you'd have to use Wizarding money for that. Or somehow, again, use Muggle money and have some Muggle build your house for you. For some reason, I don't think that's appealing to the Wizarding people.
Imperio a Muggle.
Oh gosh.
And they can't detect your Imperial because the trace is lifted after 17. So,
but that's an unforgivable curse. Aren't those all detectable?
Really? Well, not
Isn't
really.
Not?
No, I mean, they're unforgivable, but they can't.
They're unforgivable,
yeah.
but they're also undetectable.
Undetectable, yeah. But no, it just makes me wonder, because you don't have to use Gringotts. You don't have to use that bank. And that seems to be like the only bank, though.
At least in Britain.
But it's like, can you imagine at the age of 5, you get a card from a relative and it has 2 nuts in it and a sickle. You'd be like, let me put this in the house fund, and have a
would
jar.
You put it in a jar?
Yeah.
But the unanswered question is, what about big purchases? Do you have to have all the money on hand, or is there a credit system? We just don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The check is with the owl. The owl got lost.
Exactly. How do you enforce it? Because we know through example that the Ministry of Magic has had periods of great corruption where most of their actions were based on politics rather than actual policy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because, at first they wanted to silence Harry for speaking about Voldemort, and then, he blows up his aunt, and he goes and thinks he's going to be kicked out, and the Minister of Magic's waiting for him at the cauldron and says, "Oh, don't worry about it, Harry. Everyone blows up their aunts. No big deal." And that's just totally the opposite of what he expected to happen, which, of course, he would expect it, because the Ministry of Magic said, if next time you do this, you're out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, again, it seems very politically motivated rather than actually law-oriented. It seems very lawless in the Wizarding world. So,
let's dive a little bit deeper here. Because of the amount of trade going on, and wizards have to get, let's say the stores in Diagon Alley, the merchants have to get their goods and services from somebody. I'm sorry, the wizards in Diagon Alley have to get their goods from somebody, right? The stores have to maintain that they're stocked and
stuff, yeah.
So let's talk about, do we think that there's a wizarding stock market and there's investments in particular companies? And I mean, are there, stockbrokers, wizarding stockbrokers, and are they yelling out on the floor, buy, sell, sell, sell? Oh, oak. Everybody's getting oak wands. Buy oak, buy oak,
That's a great point. I can't see that being a thing for some reason. But it almost has to be, right? Like it's called commodities. Like a commodity is something that everyone or lots of people need, and so, but it's still worth something. You still have to trade it, and it still has a value.
Right.
But we're talking about corn, wood, very basic things that can be made into a lot of other things.
Right. See, with the Muggles, companies list shares of their stock on an exchange, often to raise money to grow their business, and investors purchase those shares, and the investors then buy and sell these stocks among themselves, and the stock and the stock exchange tracks the supply and demand of each listed stock. So,
right. Are you saying that's the Muggle world, right?
That's the Muggle world, yeah. And that's kind of like the real basic economics 101, like of any kind of, community dealing with trade.
Right. There's going to be interest in investing in companies because those companies need investment capital, that's what it's called, in order to operate, right, and to grow and to build new things and do what they're going to do. So
So I wonder who provides that in the wizarding world. Like, are the richest
or if
families?
they do, it seems like they'd have to, right?
Right. Well, we know. I mean, the only rich families that we know in the wizarding world are really keep to themselves and not really sharing of their money and their success.
Yeah, it always struck me as the movie Titanic, where or not even the movie, but just at the real times of the Titanic, where there were guests or passengers that were old money versus new money,
Yeah.
So it always struck me that the Wizarding world is very old money, but Muggle-born ones are kind of looked down on as the new money if they have money, I guess.
Yeah.
But they're all out. If you're not, at least if you're not pureblood, you're not an insider. You're not an old money person, because how could you be? But I'm getting off track here again.
No, that kind of makes me wonder. Like, okay, let's say, okay, Muggles, whenever they're 11, go to Hogwarts, right? And they go through all their 7 years of school, and then they're offered a job, yada yada, with the Ministry of Magic after they graduate. But whenever you graduate, you still don't have any money. So how are you able to pay for items? I mean,
right?
It's like you have to have a house, right? You don't have Muggle money because you haven't had a job. You've been away at a school that's in the northern parts of Scotland for the past 7 years, and like we haven't heard of
really just enter the Muggle world. Well, you could, but it would be like you're a stranger there to the system, a stranger to the system.
So it's like there has to be some sort of, getting back to the whole credit thing, there has to be some sort of credit system, and good faith credit. Maybe it's attached to, maybe you have a, I don't know, Maybe the
to
signature
enforce
that
it,
you
they-
purchase, whenever you make a big purchase and you sign your name away with a certain quill.
What if
that
it's an unbreakable vow of some kind?
exactly,
Like,
with money.
yeah. Or, well, I mean, maybe it's not tied to that, but there's some magical force that enforces the agreement.
Rumpelstiltskin
In
did
essence. Right. Like, I just, yeah, I keep getting back to the enforcement and the draconian, like, very authoritarian regime of the Ministry of Magic that basically just decides, and you can't argue. Like, it's already been done.
Well, think about it. You
Like,
don't have
the
the
trials,
money.
like we said. You know, they have them in people in cages with no defense. Like, what is that?
Maybe they don't have people that default on their obligations, their financial obligations, because maybe the
Maybe.
ultimate penalty is, and as
Is too
archaic,
great.
yeah, as archaic as the Wizarding World is, and we know it's very kind of medieval.
Yeah.
It, whenever back in the day, whenever you could not pay, you went to jail. You couldn't pay
Yeah,
taxes.
it was called debtor's prison. That was in the real world, yes, the Muggle world. We did that.
Exactly. So, of course, we don't have that in the United States, but other countries do.
Yeah, but we also have basically indentured servants still in this country today.
Yes.
And around the world. Like, they were just talking about that. We're not going to get too far off track here, but the taxi system in New York City, there was just a big expose about how it's mostly, it was, at least for a period, maybe still is, mostly immigrants who basically were trapped into doing this
They
because
had
they
to pay for
couldn't
their,
get out of it.
Yeah, they have to pay. They had to buy a $200,000 medallion, and they're still paying.
And then
on
you have
that.
to pay it back.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's is there something like that in the Wizarding World, or is it just exactly like people just don't do it because the punishment is too great?
And
if that makes sense.
Is that why Azkaban is as full as it is?
And so abhorrent and scary that it actually does serve as a deterrent for crime. But I don't know, that's a huge debate. I mean, even in the real world, is capital punishment, like, is that a deterrent? If a court ultimately says the punishment for your crime is you could be put to death, like we debate that in the real world. Is the death penalty moral or immoral, or should it be there, should it not?
Right, and we know that there's several cases in the Wizarding World that they kind of believe in this capital punishment thing. I mean, the most recent that we've seen was in Fantastic Beasts. And I mean, even though that might not be a recent as far as time frame of the world,
example in
it's
the
a
lore.
recent example of the Wizarding World. Right, yeah, you're sitting in a chair and you're basically you're put to death.
But
that's
I mean, like, you nailed it. You said, the magical world is still very medieval, even though it's alongside modern times with the Muggles right now.
Right.
It's still very medieval, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe that Azkaban is the deterrent, and that just nobody. Well, we know not everyone follows the law because Azkaban's full of people. So some people still think it's. I mean, and even in the real world, even with capital punishment, even knowing that a potential punishment is being put to death, people still commit crimes in the Muggle world like that. So it's unexplainable, really. It's basically we'd have to debate why people do the things they do, which is unknowable.
Mm-hmm. You're
But
exactly
like
right.
so we got a little bit off track there, but it's I keep getting back to the legal protections in the Wizarding World, or lack thereof. Essentially, there's like no basic civil rights
Right.
in the Wizarding World.
Money.
So the judicial system in the Wizarding World, known as the Wizengamot, I can never pronounce that. It's the panel of witches and wizards, of which we know Dumbledore is a member, actually. They preside during trials or hearings. We know Harry witnessed 3 of them through Dumbledore's memories, he was the chief warlock of the Wizengamot for much of the time that Harry knew him.
Right.
It is not known. I'm reading, by the way, we'll link to this because it's an amazing article from the Justia Law blog. And their article says, it's not known if lower courts exist or if the Wizengamot constitutes a sort of Supreme Court, or if this is the only court system. So the Charter of Rights grants the accused the right to call witnesses and be represented by another person, but it does not mention lawyers. And in the other examples we saw, the defendant had no representation, and in one case was in a cage, like Barty Crouch Jr.
Now, this article on Justia is a little bit older, so it doesn't include the things from Fantastic Beasts, but it does include
goes through Deathly Hallows.
Goes through Deathly Hallows, yeah, because it does include a look into changes into the legal system. But one thing that really stood out to me was punishment. Of course, we talked about that just a minute ago, but serious crimes resulted in imprisonment in Azkaban, and I could not imagine being sent to prison for not paying a bill.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense to me. And
although we had that in the real world, and we just talked about how medieval the Wizarding world still is today.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they're just way behind, or the prevailing feeling is that it's effective, and so they keep it. Which is kind of chilling to think about.
And it's kind of like, I guess they have a system now of, it's not broke, let's not fix it. Well,
right.
As the world kind of changed and progressed around them, they changed and progressed in some areas as well, but in the areas that they had to, but with regards to their legal system, I'm even wondering with regards to like the medical community, which is what we're going to be getting into next week, is wizarding healthcare. I wonder if that's that's all stayed pretty much the same since, for as long as anybody can remember, I guess, since modern times.
Yeah. In the Wizarding world, we know that after the first, I guess, Wizarding, well, not the first, but the Wizarding War with Voldemort, before he disappeared, they, at that time, the Ministry, suspended a lot of basic rights that never came back. They basically stripped a bunch of rights away, basic rights, because Voldemort was such a threat, and then a lot of those rights didn't come back. I'm trying to find the specific ones because it was interesting.
The Muggle-Born Registration Commission, for one.
Oh gosh, yeah.
that was
Japanese
god
internment
awful.
camps
Yeah.
in America.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's a great testament to Jo that she kind of echoed things that have happened in the real world in the Wizarding world, because any group of people, any community, any government is going to have to deal with these issues, and to her credit, she didn't hide from them.
But we know of course, J.K. Rowling has been in the middle of ever since she started writing the series, because she's lived through it. She was a single mother on welfare and dealing with kind of all of these things like
government services, basic civility and dignity,
not pay. I don't know if she ever defaulted on any of her financial obligations, but she really did have a tough time. She was a single mother,
She was on benefits,
exactly.
At least, assistance. Maybe not. She wasn't getting that. She was still working or trying to work, as far as we know.
So she had it. I feel, because she's a brilliant person, and such a brilliant mind, that she was able to understand kind of the science behind the legal system, the financial system, behind just really basic human rights and things like that. And she's her understanding of that, because she was in the middle of it, she had a very deep understanding.
And part of it is to make the plot more interesting, of course, but a lot of it, I think a reason, personally, I can't speak for other fans, but the reason I love the Harry Potter universe, or the Wizarding world now, and this for the same reason I love Star Trek, is everything can be explained usually through something that's already been explained. It's amazing. We've been, that's why we have, podcasts for Harry Potter today, is because we can continue to try to poke holes, and we almost always get resistance to be like, well, hold on, that was explained over here, or that could be explained with this, or that's what I love about this universe. It's so vast, but so understandable still in many ways.
And people ask me whenever I tell them I host a Harry Potter podcast, they're like, how do you keep going now? The Harry Potter's been done for the past 12 years. And I'm like, well, because the world is just...
Is life ever over? Is life ever done? No.
Right.
It's like a living universe.
It really
is. The issues we're talking about are issues that any group of people would have to deal with if they collectively decide to be a community or whatever, a government.
And it's so brilliant because some of the issues that come up out of this story are issues that we're going through right now as a society.
Yeah,
a lot of that is very. It's also it's fascinating, but it's very, very scary at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, when you have, let's not get too political here, but when you have a president constantly dismissing the only constitutionally protected profession, which is journalism, basically the only thing in the Constitution that says is absolutely hands-off from the government is journalism. And we have a president who constantly berates that or that dismisses it and calls them the enemy of the people. I mean, let's not get too into that territory, but that greatly disturbs me personally. I don't know how anyone else feels. But
and you know what it reminds me of is whenever Voldemort installed his top lieutenants into the Ministry of Magic to oversee, the different
a lot of that stuff.
things.
Yeah, a lot of cronyism, a lot of I'll pat your back, you pat mine.
And he even did it at the Daily Prop as well to control what was coming out of the press.
It's scary stuff.
It really is. So I mean, a lot of what we continue to talk about, even after starting the show 11 years ago, is definitely relevant today.
Yeah, and that's, again, I mean, let's not effuse too much about how great Harry Potter is. Everyone knows who's listening because you're listening to this show. But I mean, really, honestly, that goes to the proof that this story will live on for a long, long time. Because it's like a living universe parallel to our own.
It really is. Yeah, it's like kind of that story that will never be complete at all because it just keeps it keeps growing, it keeps living on, and people keep contributing, and content keeps coming out as a result of people contributing. So,
yeah, I mean this blog on Justia that somebody wrote, digging into the legal system in the Harry Potter world is awesome. Like, I love this stuff. And it's only through the strength of the universe and the lore that we're able to do this. Because if you could just poke a hole and there was no explanation for it, everyone would just be like, "Oh, that's boring." Actually, contrary to that, that's part of what we do as the deep fans is poke the holes and talk about them, talk about what those mean. That's what we're doing here.
Speaking of that, I'm just reading this comment from Gus Brunner on this Justia blog, and he says, I think you could talk about what laws might be and might not be in the wizarding world. For example, due to lack of knowledge on the subject matter, I'm fairly certain things like narcotics, gambling, prostitution, etc. are legal in the wizarding world. Hang on, guys. I'm going somewhere with this. Also, arms dealing also seems completely legal, as Ollivander technically sells weapons to children. You could sell guns, missiles, and bombs without any repercussions. However, that may be false, as there's a Department of Misuse on Muggle artifacts. On the other hand, Arthur Weasley seems to be stuck on airplanes, like you were saying. Jeff.
That was my comment. Yeah. Why? That's a whole other discussion.
So
why is Arthur Weasley so apparently uneducated about the thing that is his job, which is Muggle interaction?
It says, so it's safe to say he hardly knows what a nuclear bomb looks like. All in all, it seems like a Muggle-born could use that knowledge to make a rather large fortune.
Yeah, we talked about that, like how, if you're a bad guy, you could use magic to do some pretty bad things and get away with a lot of it, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, and this is
But see, that's the thing, is the threat, though, is always, if you're caught, we will send you to Azkaban. But again, that's still not enough of a deterrent for some people.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that enough of a deterrent? And
clearly not.
Obviously,
we have the death penalty in the real world, and people still commit crimes. So, again, it goes to, we can't know what's in somebody's head, and we can't know the reasons for people doing the things they do, especially in the light of these punishments that are either real or fictional.
Something that's sticking with me right now is we're speaking about repercussions. Whenever Barty Crouch Jr. is revealed in Goblet of Fire, at the end of Goblet of Fire, right? And he says, "I'll be welcomed back like a hero," whenever he's referring to his trip back to Azkaban. Well, yeah, but what's that going to do for you, bud? You're still going to be stuck in a cell. I mean, that's the consequence if you're not given the kiss, which I think he ultimately was.
Right.
There's like, how are you going to live off of that? You're not going to live off of that in Azkaban, because that's something that's making you happy that you're going to feed off of. But the Dementors are going to turn right around and feed that right away from
feed
you.
Off of that. Yep. We all know that the way that it was described, that the punishment of Azkaban can be viewed as worse than death. Which, if that's not a deterrent, my goodness.
Yeah, exactly. Shell of yourself.
So again, it goes to the motivation of people to do what they're going to do, and a deterrent is not enough for some people.
Right.
It's just the end of it. So that goes back to our whole discussion, which is, how do you enforce economic contracts where somebody owes somebody money? How do you enforce or if there's loans and all that stuff? It requires a system in place to deal with, unless their entire system is just, if you don't do something we like, you're going to Azkaban. Or if you do something we don't like, basically. That does seem to be the point. Isn't that the prevailing legal system in the Wizarding world? It's if you do something bad, we're sending you to Azkaban.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's very vague what that bad is.
Yeah, it's as though, like we said, let's say when you sign for credit, and you get it, let's say they do have credit, first of all, and you sign with that special quill, and instantly any money that you get is taken out of your Green God's vault, so it doesn't give you the opportunity to default on that unless you get fired or let go from your job.
But then let's say your account's empty, then what happens?
But
does it whisk you off to Azkaban automatically?
Right, exactly, because you're no longer contributing to the betterment of society, so they don't see you as an asset that they have to
that's a very dangerous way of thinking, though. Of course, I know that's not your thinking, but that's,
right.
You can't treat people as not people. That's just, literally inhuman.
Exactly. But so it's also sucking souls out of people.
Exactly. Yeah. But again, if that's not enough of a deterrent, I don't know what is. A fate worse than death. I don't know.
I was thinking of trade, right? And how countries and states and stuff like that trade with each other and yada yada. Well, is it possible that the wizarding community trades, as we say,
do they trade en masse with the Muggle world?
Yeah, well, no, they trade underground with each other. The British trade with the Americans, who trade with the wizards in Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
They have
treaties and whatnot.
That could be like the wizarding stock market. That would be a good reason to have the wizarding stock market. But at the same time, it's like, well, a deeper kind of way of thinking is, well, if you're like, let's say the British don't like what the people down in Brazil are doing, well, can you impose economic sanctions and force the Muggles to, to do what it is that you want them to do, or guide them in the direction that you want them to go in, to help out your community without them knowing it? And
sheesh. Yeah.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah. And I don't know. Obviously we don't know the answer to that, but it just seems like, in the absence of details, there has to be something there. Like, I don't know about the stock market, because we're dealing today with the ills of having basically not unregulated, but very loosely regulated and oversight of stock market things, which is why we had all the problems we did with the real estate bubble and the country almost going into another depression, but not. We just barely got out of that in what was called the Great Recession.
So there might be some. I would think that there's some kind of safeguard in, much as we have safeguards in our own stock market, right? If it dips below a certain percentage in a day, it automatically just goes off. Yeah. So in the wizarding community, like, I can imagine it being so much more broader, so much more focused that, if something doesn't go a certain way, that magic kind of comes in to correct it.
Right.
I mean,
that's
to
all.
prevent.
That's the great explanation of all Harry Potter. If you can't explain it, it's magic.
I love magic.
Okay, so there's a site online. I don't know if I'm sure people have come across it. It's called Quora. It's essentially the new Yahoo Answers, but much more. Well, I wouldn't say much more, but a lot more respectable.
Yeah.
There's actually valuable answers on it, not just joke answers like Yahoo Answers was. So I just pulled up one. Are there stock markets in the Harry Potter universe? Was asked. Can't tell. It doesn't really say when, but somebody answered in 2017. It can be assumed there are through references. So their example was there are financial investors in the wizarding world as the Consortium of Goblinary Finance and Red-Nosed Wizards Investors. Holy cow. Can we get a fact check on that? That might be from one of the extra books, because I don't remember that from Harry Potter.
Doesn't that really bother you, though? I mean, I'm not saying this with any kind of prejudice or racism or anything like that, but because they're the goblins are notably the best about handling money in the wizarding world. Doesn't it bother you that their financial backbone is just based off of
gold in a vault?
Yeah, and goblins kind of
and dragons
keeping track of all of that. And then what you just said.
Well, here's some even more evidence. In Order of the Phoenix, when Mr. Weasley is taking Harry to his hearing, the lift, the magic elevator at the Ministry announces, and this is a quote, Level 5, Department of International Magical Cooperation, incorporating the International Magical Trading Standards Body, the International Magical Office of Law, and the International Confederation of Wizards British seats. This commenter goes on to say, if they have that International Magical Trading Standards Body, that means there is some sort of regulatory body for wizarding trading, akin to Muggle trade. Just have to assume that, based on the title. With the further assumption that trade involves trained individuals. They go on to say it is likely Percy Weasley works in this department when he starts out at the Ministry, as he he writes a lengthy report on the standardization of cauldron bottom thickness for importing. Remember? Yeah, I forgot about that. An unidentified Gringotts goblin can be heard saying, terrible day yesterday, lost a lot of galleons trading on the potions market. So there you go. Those were direct passages from the book. So these imply there are stock markets for wizarding sectors.
There we go. Oh my God,
Potions.
There's the aha moment.
Yeah, that's why I do like Quora a lot. By the way,
the potions market. Oh my gosh! So they're trading potions on some sort of a bigger scale, like on a bigger wizarding stock market.
That goes into the commodities.
Yeah.
You trade corn and soybeans and flu powder.
Can you imagine during the Voldemort years? During the
wait, wasn't there a flu powder shortage at one point?
Yeah.
So that definitely goes into trade and supply and demand, and
so during the Voldemort years, there must have been a huge demand for Veritasium. I can imagine. At the Muggle-born Registration Commission, they're like, okay, surrender your wand, take this shot, let's go.
Oh, I misspoke. We need to correct this right away because I just searched for flu powder shortage and. Very top result, Pottermore, written by J.K. Rowling. No shortage of flu powder has ever been reported, nor does anybody know anyone who makes it.
Ah, okay.
Its price has remained constant for 100 years. The only licensed producer in Britain is a company called Flu Pow in Diagon Alley, and they never answer their front door. This is stuff written by J.K. Rowling.
It reminds me a little bit of Willy Wonka, never ever being seen.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay, so I misspoke. According to J.K. Rowling, there's never ever been a flu powder shortage.
But there was a shortage in something.
Strictly controlled manufacturer. What?
There was a shortage in something, and I can't remember what it was.
I know, I remember now. It was a shortage, but I can't remember what it was.
Boy.
It might have been Veritasium, actually, now that you mention it. But that was only because of Snape's personal stocks.
Yeah, I think that was.
Oh, yeah, no, in the Order of the Phoenix. Remember when Umbridge was there, and he may have lied, actually, and said, no, he didn't lie. He said, you've used all my Veritasium on all these kids, basically.
Yeah.
It'll take long to make more.
Wow.
And I did find it. Veritasium ingredients were very hard to come by at some points, thanks to shortages in certain things because of the war. There you
well,
go.
yeah, there we go. Wow, this
So
is
there are-
crazy.
yeah.
This is crazy. I love it because just on that topic right there, just on that little bit, I mean, we could talk about it literally for another hour or so. Just on, I mean, that one small point in the financial system and trade and stuff like that. We could go on and on and on about it.
Well, of all sites, you remember Cracked?
Yes.
Cracked.com. I just found an article from them, 5 horrifying realities of the Harry Potter government, and it's talked about a lot of stuff that we just mentioned. I'm just going to read the list items, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The legal system protects no one. We've discussed that. There's no defense attorneys, basically, unless you bring one yourself. 4, the entire penal system is based around terror and pain. That's Azkaban. This article says it makes Guantanamo Bay look like spring break. Number 3, the government is an incompetent dictatorship. That's demonstrated over and over again. Number 2, most wizards are selfish dicks. That's what it says. And finally, number 1, wizards should be viewed as an unchecked superpower in the world. Basically, wow. Yeah.
That's funny that you just mentioned that last point because I'm still on the Justia Law blog and I'm looking at one of the commenters right now, Michael Johnson, and this was from 2010, you guys, but he said, "I never fully appreciated just how unfair the legal system in the wizarding world truly was. There does not seem to be many checks and balances."
No, and we've discussed that. Yeah, it's how do you defend against a letter from the ministry giving you the punishment? Like, there's no answering it. It's already been done.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's like totalitarianism. Yeah. Wow.
Wow. I honestly I need a break. This is fascinating to think
isn't it?
about, but I mean I love it, and I love how in depth this world is. And it's
That's
I mean
we're all
there's
here still, I think.
and I appreciate I really appreciate how whenever the Potter series was still coming of age, people really dove into these topics because the articles that we were referencing today, and even from Cracked, that's a site I completely forgot about.
Yeah, right.
These are from 2010. There was a couple from like 2006 that we had mentioned earlier today, and I mean it's just like we've already thought about this kind of stuff, but it's never really. I guess we're kind of rehashing it. We're bringing it out and seeing how it applies to the world today, and
yeah, I think it's always worth talking about these issues because they spring from, I think, reality. I mean, obviously, fiction is not only enjoyable, but a lot of the enjoyment of fiction comes from the what if scenarios, like the what if the world was like this.
Yeah.
But it comes from based on the real world anyway.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this week's episode. We want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to this. It's a really unconventional episode, and I kind of liked it. I kind of like how we kind of split it up a little bit with the ladies first, and then of course Jeff, you're such a source of information because you've been around for so long that. You're just.
What are you saying?
You're really great to hash out these kind of topics with. So I can't thank you enough for joining us again.
I appreciate it. It's always really fun to be on the show.
Again, guys, check out wizarding.news. Plug it every single episode, and it's really. I mean, we're talking about these powerhouses and these wonderful sources of information about the wizarding world of Harry Potter, and Wizarding News is just that. I invite you to go check out, even on the homepage, look at Today in Potter History. And what we were talking about this day, this week.
Is there something in Harry Potter history today?
You know what? I need to go check Wizarding News and see if there is.
I thought you were about to say there was something that we just talked about today there. But there's articles from 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, and 2010, all from today in the history of the Harry Potter universe.
So let's just give it a once over here. 2004. Okay, so this is video and screen captures of HBO special and Conan O'Brien. Okay, so David Heyman says that Potter is alive and well. This was from 2004.
I wonder why he said that, though.
let's go into the article and take a look here. So for the so it looks like it says Harry Potter producer David Heyman believes the Potter franchise remains a force to be reckoned with, and that the recent outpouring of fans at the premiere of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban shows that it is alive and well. So I guess the premiere of Prisoner of Azkaban was 13, 14, 15 years ago.
15 years.
Yeah.
I believe that was the true beginning of Warner Brothers' relationship with fan sites, thanks to, I don't know if it's all her doing, but Melissa Anelli from Leaky Cauldron. Pretty sure she was the first. She got to go to the Prisoner of Azkaban set and was the only fan site representative to do that, as far as I know. And that opened the door to this major movie studio with this major property actually opening the door to other fan sites and saying, let's involve you, and that was great. And I hope it continues with the new stuff that they're doing,
Yeah, definitely. Last bit of news before we go from Potter history. We officially got today the runtime for Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, and this is, again, from the article over on Wizarding News, that it's 138 minutes long, which is 2 hours, 18 minutes, and 4 seconds, according to the British Board of Film Classification. They also released the rating for Order of the Phoenix, which was 12A, which means no one under 12 years may see the movie without an accompanying adult. And then the MPAA released the rating as well for Order of the Phoenix on this day, and the rating was PG-13, which places kids under 13 in the same restriction. So that is just a sample of what you can find over at Wizarding News. So please go ahead and go to wizarding.news. Make that your homepage again.
Yeah, it changes every day with the latest, well, not the latest, but currently it shows you Harry Potter history, or today in Harry Potter history going back 16 years in some cases.
Yeah, and you can also find the most recent episode of Hogwarts Radio
yes, right there on the homepage.
On the homepage, so yeah, go check it out. I think that is about it for this week's episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Once again, I'm Terrence Pinkston.
I'm Jeff Gillum.
And we'll see you next time for episode 246. Bye-bye.
That was bloody brilliant.
Codswallop.